Afternoon, everybody, and welcome to another business spotlight interview. And we've got two really interesting business owners today. We have Rhian and Katie from Frank and Friend. So, guys, take it in turns and tell us all about your business.
So I'm Rhian. Obviously, you've just introduced Katie from Frank and Friend. So Frank and Friend is we're a B2B marketing agency. We pride ourselves on kind of a combination of big agency thinking, which is where we've got loads of our experience from, but with a small agency mindset. So giving kind of added value at every turn. The name Frank and Friend comes from the duality of mine and Katie's personalities. I am Frank, Katie is Friend, but we've spent a lot of time kind of perfecting the balance of those two kind of personality traits. So I'm not always horrible and Katie's not always friendly. We operate on a slightly different business model. So we don't have a huge in-house team sitting here, which means we don't have an unused boardroom. We don't pass on huge overheads in our fees, which makes us more valuable. But we do have a network of specialists that we call on at any given time for any given project, meaning we kind of assemble the team project by project, which we think is kind of a bit of a superpower of ours. And we're just super transparent about it. I think a lot of agencies do work in that way. They just pretend that they don't to make themselves feel and look bigger and more credible. And that's completely against our core values of kind of honesty, transparency, building relationships and providing positive challenge. So I guess that's us in a nutshell.
Fantastic. And Katie, what type of companies do you normally work for?
Yeah, so as Rhian said, it's B2B. That's where our kind of experience lies. Our key industries are automotive, financial services, and the third one is
Technology.
Technology, yeah. So that's our mainly automotive at the moment. We've got past experience, quite a lot of past experience with a big technology brand, and then also we've got a few small financial service clients as well.
Okay, brilliant. I mean, and how have you seen it change over the last few years? I mean, did COVID have an impact, for example?
We actually set up during COVID.
Oh, right.
Yeah, so we set up during COVID, and we set up with a slightly different mission to the one that we've got now. And our kind of initial thing was around helping really micro small businesses and providing all of the big thinking and kind of experience that we had to them. However, as commercially as a business, things have to happen. And so we do still work with a kind of select few of that size business that we either have a personal connection with or we really believe in. And there are a couple of charities amongst that as well. But then we really honed back in on our experience and work with kind of the medium size SME upwards into corporate size businesses now, just because that's where we can add the most value.
Ah, brilliant. And over this time, have you seen any changes in terms of how people perceive marketing?
Perceived marketing, yeah, I guess so. I guess with the economic climate, there's a bit of a hesitancy at the moment with marketing, which I think sometimes people can think when we've got less money, we should bring our marketing in. But I think it's the exact opposite. We'd advise it's when you need it most. It's when you need to invest in it. Changes, I think COVID, we set up in COVID, as Rhian said, so things like people working more flexibly, people working remotely, that was all our norm from the start. We have always worked on a 4-day week. So again, we set up, it's a lot of talk about 4-day weeks at the moment, but we just did that from the start as well. So we were always remote, we were always on a 4-day week, and we were always working in this flexible way to try and do what our client needs as these things change. So there are changes, but I think that we've tried to set ourselves up in a way that means that we can flex with those changes rather than them sort of throw us too much.
No, that's really interesting and a great share for everybody. I mean, if you get marketing right, marketing is free. That's one of the phrases that people lots of people talk about that. So you set your own business up. Was this something you've always wanted to do, Rhian?
Yes, for me it is. I come from a family of business owners, so I've grown up my whole life surrounded by people running their own businesses. And for a long time I was like, I want to do that, but I don't know what my thing is. I didn't have a thing. They all had a real skill or a kind of talent that was a no-brainer for them to turn into a business, and I just worked in marketing. But then having worked agency side, client side, having my children, I was like, you know what, now's the time I can turn marketing into my thing and set up the business. So I picked up the phone to Katie and said, I'm doing it now, are you in? And
I was pregnant in the middle of COVID with my second child, and I said, absolutely.
Yeah, and the rest is history.
Absolutely, absolutely brilliant. And so, Katie, I mean, big agency, you're a smaller agency. What's the real difference between the two?
Big and small agencies, you mean?
Yeah.
Sorry. Well, I think so. The beginning of this year, end of last year, we did some research with some B2B marketeers, so people in brands that are working in marketing, and we, for our own kind of while we were setting up, so we sort of made sure that we were kind of setting up something that fit the market. And I think what we heard from a lot of them was that some of the bigger agents, not all of them, but some of the bigger agencies that they worked with, they actually got worse service from. So some of them said they had to chase some of their agencies, which is completely crazy to us, because we've always, I mean, even the bigger agency we worked in was very, very, you know, its customer service was king, you know, that was just crazy to us. But I think, yeah, that they just don't have that hunger that we have. So when we've pitched against some big agencies, they, you know, the feedback has been, you guys went above and beyond, we felt like you were, you know, you cared more. Whereas I think sometimes bigger agencies can get complacent, and they can kind of just put less effort into it, thinking that their kind of credentials is going to get them the work, but not putting the work into the actual pitch process. So things like that. And I think smaller agencies, or the way we're set up, you know, it's that care, it's that hunger, it's that the experience that we give to our customers. It's they're really important to us all the time, rather than being maybe a small fish in a big pond, or however you want to think of it.
Yeah, and as I think you probably bring the flexibility to the table, Rhian.
Yeah, flexibility, adaptability. We can move quickly. We can work on multiple things at any given time, because we have our network. So we're not kind of limited to only a set resource. We can expand and contract that resource as we need to, which a lot of clients that we've spoken to think is a real benefit, because often in other agencies where they are more cumbersome, they have very strict processes. It has to go through a studio, and there's only limited resource within that. So if they want that, they have to wait for the other thing. So we don't have limitations like that. Also, like I mentioned earlier, because of the way we're set up and the way we operate, we don't have huge overheads that we pass on in our fees or anything like that. So actually you're getting a better, more flexible service for less than you would if you worked with those big agencies, often, not always, but most of the time.
Brilliant, thanks for that. So what have been your biggest learnings in business and life, Katie?
I think the big one was to make sure you're doing your new business when you're really busy and making sure. And I was told this as well. My dad was a freelancer, and he told me that was the bit of advice that he told me: always work on the business and in the business at the same time. And we didn't. And I think you have to learn lessons yourself, don't you? Someone can tell you something, and I think until you actually go through it yourself, you don't perhaps learn it in the same way. But yeah, keeping always working on the business and in the business, and keeping the kind of opportunities in the pipeline open, because the big project you're working on at the moment that's making you really busy, especially if you're a small team like us, is going to come to an end at some point.
Absolutely, absolutely. And so you talked about Frank and Friend. How do you actually manage the dynamics between you two?
We've had a lot of practice. We've worked together on and off for the past kind of 11 years. We went through, at the first agency we worked at, we did a six-month leadership course where we really delved into our psyches. So we understand each other very well. We know what we react opposite in extreme circumstances, and we know that. So we know that we have to try and bring each other back into a middle point. But we also set up this thing that the business would never become before our friendship. So we're able to have very kind of heavy and difficult and sometimes uncomfortable conversations at work and leave them there, and our friendship remains the priority. So we also have some coaching. So we've been doing some coaching with a coach through Oxlet business. And she's been helping us kind of with that dynamic in those extreme circumstances, which we've been feeling recently, some really high highs and really low lows, about how to manage each other through that. So I mean, it's an ongoing thing that we have to keep working on, but I think we've got it pretty sussed at the moment.
Brilliant.
And it's having that awareness, isn't it? And I think I'd recommend coaching to anyone, because I think understanding yourself first, but also understanding other people is just key to business, but life. Like we need to understand each other and ourselves to be able to make things work better.
Brilliant. Thanks for sharing that. The dynamics of, but the lovely thing is, leave it at work, friendship comes first. Absolutely fantastic. So what does the future look like, and what do you see as the main challenges going ahead?
We've both gone silent.
It's carrying on building on what we've done, isn't it? I think, and as Rhian said, our expectations have maybe shifted as things have gone on, and it's making the business do what we want it to do at the moment, and being realistic about that. So we want it to work around our families, we want to work with some great new clients, and it's just keeping our work-life balance that we've landed on a pretty good work-life balance compared to lots of people, and it's about keeping that going and carrying on doing some really exciting projects with some new clients.
Fantastic. And you, Rhian?
Yeah, similarly, I think when we first set out, one of the personality traits that I know I have is impatience, and I am like, I want everything and I want it now, and once I got it, I want the next thing, and that's just how I operate. And what this being in this kind of partnership with Katie and within the business has taught me patience beyond belief, that things aren't always going to be like that and that quick and on to the next straight away, and getting this business to do what we want it to do for us now is enough for me now, and in a few years' time that might change, and we'll talk about it and push on with some hopefully bigger growth then. But yeah, pretty happy with how it's going, and if we can carry on doing the same for the next few years while the kids are tiny and taking up a lot of our mental capacity, then brilliant.
Brilliant. What a great share. And finally, Katie first, what is the best advice you would give to an 18-year-old you?
Probably just not to worry about anything unless worrying is going to be able to change it. So just kind of you learn that over time, don't you? But I think we waste so much time worrying about things that haven't happened yet, or the what ifs, and I think it's just, if my worrying is going to have a positive impact, then let's do it, but if not, then let's just see what happens.
Brilliant. And finally, Rhian?
So I'm going to quote a famous Tom Hanks. In fact, he sat and I watched a clip where he was talking with a load of other A-list Hollywood celebs, and he said the best kind of thing he wished he knew was this too shall pass, which is true. If it's going really well, this too shall pass. If it's going terribly, this too shall pass. Everything is a phase, everything will move on. Yeah, so something along those lines.
Wonderful. What a great share, great learnings for everybody. Guys, thanks very much for your time.
Thank you.
Yeah.